What's up, guys? Yes, this is the Dirt Bike Channel podcast. This is Kyle Brotherson. I'm your host, and today I am so excited for today's special guest. I don't think I've been this excited for a guest for recording a podcast in a long time. We're going to be talking about mental health today and riding dirt bikes and how riding dirt bikes basically enriches all aspects of our lives, but specifically the mental health side of it. There are so many super cool things that we're going to jump into with this. Today, I have a special guest. It's Dr. Domenick Sportelli. I will introduce him a little bit more when we pull him on, but we are so blessed to be able to get his perspective on this and to have him teach us why riding dirt bikes and some of these other hobbies that we're doing are so critical for our mental health and how it benefits us in so many different ways. It was just such an awesome phone call I had with him yesterday as we prep for this a little bit, and I want to get him on the line right now, and we'll go through this. So give me a second.
Hey, Kyle, can you hear me, buddy?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me okay?
Perfect. I got you good. So I have you on a headset, so let me know if everything's coming through okay, because I want to be hands-free for this.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. I've got you going through my recording software, so if you can hear me okay, then I think we're good.
I got it, bud. You sound awesome.
Awesome. Great. Well, here's the intro. So welcome, Dr. Dom. This is Dr. Domenick Sportelli. For those of you who don't know who he is a medical doctor. He's a board-certified adult and child psychiatrist. He's been seen as a guest host multiple times on The Doctors on CBS. He's a frequent news media expert, an expert guest in his field. And he's literally one of the nation's leading and go-to experts for mental health care. But not only that, from a dirt bike perspective, this is one of the coolest people that we have inside of the Dirt Bike Channel community. And I just want to like toot our horn for a little bit here. And when I say our horn, I'm not talking about me. I'm talking about us as a Dirt Bike Channel community. There are so many fantastically qualified and just unbelievable people that we have kind of in our little tribe, little community. And Dr. Dom is one of those guys. I mean, just in talking to him yesterday, and we had such a fantastic chat yesterday on the phone, and it was just mind-blowing to me. But, you know, you see people on TV, or you see them, and they look like, you know, they're so professional, and Dr. Dom is. But here's a guy who has been a street biker for most of his life. He's an avid hiker. I mean, Dr. Dom, you've walked from like the North Rim to the South Rim of the Grand Canyon? I mean, you're an outdoors type of guy, like an active lifestyle type of guy, right?
Oh yeah, Kyle. Thanks so much for the intro, man. It is such an honor. Let me get this out of the way. I'm actually humbled and honored to be on your show, man, because you have done. Forget about what I have done for people, right? We'll get this out of the way, man. But I mean this sincerely. I watch your videos with my kids just about every night. I have learned so much about dirt bike riding, about trail riding, about enduro, and that's what led me to reach out to you. And honestly, humbled and honored to be on your show and to contribute. And yeah, so I've been an outdoor guy my whole life, right? And this is, to me, I think this is where this conversation is so incredibly important and valid, is that we all do things that try and help us emotionally to get through life, right? We all have coping skills, and we all just do things to make us feel better, right? So what I've realized throughout my years of hiking and surfing and backpacking and, wakeboard, I mean, you name it, I've done it all. Snowboarding, skiing, I've skied in Europe, I've skied all around the world. Dirt bike riding, trail bike riding, enduro riding is so unique in so many aspects. And that's why I wanted to talk to you today and just get involved in this conversation, because I know people love it and I know people are doing it because it's just awesome. But there's really some psychological stuff behind this that I think is really kind of fun to look at, right? And really just interesting to sort of look at all the nuances as to why this is such an amazing sport on so many levels.
Yeah, and your perspective, and we talked about this a little bit on the phone yesterday. In the last year, I've kind of been going through a little bit of a journey with myself, and I've become more and more interested in mental health. I see a counselor to help me work through some things, which, 10 years ago I might have thought was taboo, but I've really opened my mind to the these other avenues where it's like, you know what, I've got physical health. I need to make sure that I take care of my body, but also there's this mental health side of it that I think, more and more it's becoming mainstream. And I know you're seeing this more and more with your practice, but it's something that I think a lot about. And when you first reached out to me over email and, you said, hey, I've got a couple of ideas, I was just looking at it, some of the things you put down in that email, and I'm going, wow, this is something we need to dive into a little bit more. And then yesterday, in our conversation, I was just typing notes furiously on my computer here, and I'm going, he has the medical background and the experience to articulate and give words to and give concepts to these things that I've experienced in the last decade, but didn't know I was experiencing it. I was talking to my wife after we got off the phone, and I'm going, Dr. Dom was able to tell me why I come back from a ride so energized, and why I have like my heart full, and why it's so connecting and centering to me. You have the research and the just the day-to-day meeting with clients and working with people and helping people. You see this from a different perspective than what I think us as dirt bikers do. And you're also a gearhead. You've got a beta, you've got a 2-stroke, you're out there riding stuff, you're active, you're doing all of these things. And so I just thank you so much for coming on, because I think, like I said in my intro right before I brought you on, I said, I have never been this excited to talk about dirt bikes with this little, twist of it, is like, hey, mental health, mindfulness, confidence, cognitive psychology, so many life lessons that we're going to get into, like proprioception. Proprioception.
Yeah.
We're going to get, I butchered that. I'm like, I practiced that right before we got on. Proprioception. But yes, so there's so many cool things that I want to dive into. And so just thank you so much for coming on. And we can kind of jump into wherever you think is a good place to start. But yeah, let's figure this thing out.
Yeah, for sure. And you know what, honestly, Kyle, this is the cool thing. And look, being a gearhead, being a dirt bike guy, going out with people from all walks of life, blue collar, white collar, police officers, EMTs, friends, electricians, every walk of life, salesmen that I go out with on a daily basis, right? It's funny because sometimes I get into the psych aspect of it and they're like, dude, whatever, it's just fun, why you got to analyze everything? But you know what? I think for some people, gaining a little bit of insight into like kind of that epiphany that you had when we had that discussion is like, wow, man, that makes a lot of sense. And I think for a lot of people, it might resonate, right? It might be cool. But here's the basic foundation of it all. It's fun. We love it. We have a great time doing it. And that's all that matters. But let's dive a little bit into like why that might be. And when I see patients, clients, when I see people on a daily basis, Kyle, I'm in the medical hospitals. I'm also in private practice. And man, Kyle, I can't tell you how many people are so anxious and depressed, especially lately, right?
With the COVID stuff, right? I mean, even worse now, right?
With the COVID stuff, listen, we're going through a challenge as a country right now that's unprecedented, right? So it's kind of timely and helpful to look at what helps us cope and why, right? Being a specialist and psychiatrist, I deal with depression, anxiety, and mood disorders. But even before COVID, Kyle, I mean, our anxiety and depression levels have been higher than ever. And without getting into, I don't want to get tangential too much and go off topic, but, we're really into social media, like our kids are paying so much screen time and, our priorities have changed a lot and there's a lot of criticism and decrease in self-confidence and all kinds of stuff that contributes to that. But I've seen this spike, man, in anxiety and depression and mood disorders. And here's the key. Ready for this? I'm going to say one thing that I think helps people the most, right? And it's this term called mindfulness, right? And yeah, listen, even when I first heard this as a doctor, I was like, what is this foo-foo, new age mindfulness stuff? Like, what is this, right?
Yeah.
But check this out. Mindfulness is basically being present, being in the moment, right? And why is that good psychologically? I'm going to tell you exactly why it's good. Because as researchers, And psychologists and psychiatrists and neurologists, when we look at the type of people that are anxious, these are people that are living 2 days ahead. They're living 10 minutes ahead. They're living, a month ahead. In their mind, they're going, what if this happens tomorrow? What if that happens next month? They're worried. So they're living in the future, right? They're not present. And then people that tend to be down and depressed are the people that tend to live in the past. They're constantly in their mind about, why did that happen? Why did I do this? Why did that person do this to me? I shouldn't have done that. I should have done this, right? It's people that live in the past. Mm-hmm. But my point is, mindfulness is being present. It's being right here, right now. And Kyle, let me tell you something. I don't know if you feel this, but I certainly feel it. When I am out on my Beta or my KTM or whatever I'm riding that day, and I am ripping through the trails, I am in the moment.
Yes.
There is no other. My mind is not worrying about tomorrow, and it's not thinking about yesterday. I'm present. My eyes are scanning the terrain. I'm looking at what boulder is going to come at my front wheel next, or what turn I have to make. So unlike so many other things, it brings you into the moment. There's no room for your mind to wander, and you have to be present. And that's the whole definition of mindfulness, man. And that's why when we're in the moment, we feel good. And here's the takeaway from this. If we can learn a lesson from that and draw it into our daily lives, and when we start to get anxious or start to get freaked out, just say, okay, wait a minute. Just like when I'm on my dirt bike, man, I'm going to look right in front of me. What is my issue here, right now? And I'm going to deal with it. I'm going to overcome it. Being present, taking a deep breath, saying, okay, wait a minute. It's not a month from now. It's not last year or that stupid thing I did 5 years ago. It's right now, right? Yes. Just like when you're on your bike, man. Just like when you're on that bike.
That is so
mindfulness is huge.
That is so incredible because that is this life skill that we learn, and it's so therapeutic too to just be in that moment. We have so many stresses, whether it's work or whether it's relationships or your children or taxes or COVID-19 or whatever it is. You get out there on the bike and you said that so eloquently. You are forced. You're basically forced to be mindfulness and be in the present right then, because riding a dirt bike, and we talked about this yesterday, riding a dirt bike takes so much of your mental capacity that you don't have the luxury of letting your mind wander. It can't do it. Right. There's so much happening, which is why dirt bikes is so different than some of these other sports, like street bikes. You and I have both ridden street bikes. You've probably ridden a lot more than I have, but you have time to just sit there and daydream when you're riding a street bike down the road. I mean, the main thing that you're worried about is getting killed by another a driver who doesn't see you.
Right.
But the road is just coming, and there's not really that many challenges, typically speaking. But on a dirt bike, you hit the nail on the head. You've got so many. The terrain is changing. Everything, even if it's a trail you've been on before, a tree might have fallen down. Or there might have been a landslide or a washout from like a little flash flood. You don't know what's around the next turn. And so you have to be there. You have to be present.
And absolutely. And what's so cool about this? Like as a doctor, right, I'm trying to help people. And, I'm in my office and someone has a ton of anxiety or a ton of depression. And I'll say to them, listen, mindfulness. And they're like, oh, great. What do I have to do? Go meditate now? I have to learn how to meditate, right? And I say, no, forget about meditation. Go do something you love that keeps you in the moment. So all those guys out there that are ripping around on their dirt bikes, their 2-strokes and 4-strokes and ripping through the trails, listen, I'm not saying go meditate. What I'm saying is go ride your bike, but think about afterwards. Be like, wow, put 2 and 2 together and be like, wow, that's why it works. And try and apply that to the rest of your life, man. Try and apply that to your daily routine. Be present. Approach your problems in the here and now, and I promise you'll feel better. So, just like when I tell a patient, listen, go learn mindfulness and meditate, 4 times a week or 3 times a week for 30 minutes. Hey, man, if you're a dirt bike rider, get out on the trail, but just make that connection. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. I've had my wife tell me so many times in the past, I'm cranky or whatever, and she'll tell me to go out and go for a ride. And so many of the things that we are going to be talking about today is that therapeutic thing that connects us back and gets us mindful, gets us back into the present. And I love that. Just the fact that this thing that we're doing really does help us in a mental capacity, in a mental health, is just so fascinating to me, and it just makes me giddy, and part of it is just because I'm being selfish and I'm going, hey, look, I can tell my wife, hey, look, this thing I've been doing for 10 years, it's actually been really good for me. So maybe there's a little bit of cognitive bias there, but I don't think it is because of the background that you have. With the knowledge that you have and the day-to-day practice of what you have, to hear you talk about it is so encouraging to me, and I think it will be encouraging to others. So mindfulness, I love it. What else?
Yeah, and look, and here's and a quick disclaimer too. I think there are a lot of things out there that we can do that make us feel better, right? Like I said, I surf and I hike and I do all kinds of really cool stuff. And those are all great, man. If that works for you, that is awesome. But speaking specifically to the dirt bike community on your show, I find so many unique things about dirt bike riding. And again, that's what we're going to talk about today. There are a lot of things that riding a dirt bike do that a lot of other sports don't do, right? So I think, and there's so many bullets to hit here, but, the mindfulness being the foundation, again, being here and now. I think a really, really important thing to talk about here too, Kyle, is what is it about getting out in nature that makes us feel good? Well, guess what? There's been a million studies about this. And when you look at the studies, and I looked at one from the University of British Columbia, right?
Yeah.
That when you are out in nature, and obviously we're going to talk about why a dirt bike gets us out where we need to be. When you're out there, man, you have this sense of being able to move outside of yourself and broaden your perspective. You see, and I'm not going to get all technical with the psychological jargon. I'm not going to sound like Sigmund Freud here. But here's the truth, man. When your ego starts to get too important, we tend to get a little unhappy and kind of focused on ourselves, and we can be a little bit selfish. When you get out, right? I mean, and I've seen your videos, man, and I've been to some amazing places. The drone footage, man, like you make it to the top of one of those hills, man, and you look around, you have to, whether it's subconscious or not, move outside yourself and say, oh my God, there is so much bigger and better out there than me. I'm just a small piece of this. And that is humbling, and it's so good for you. It broadens your perspectives. It decreases the ego. It allows you to move outside yourself. And everyone, just about everyone that does that, when they do surveys, it report improved psychological overall well-being. Imagine that, right? So you're on a dirt bike, right? And we were just talking about this, and I was thinking about this myself, and I was like, in the 2 hours that I have on my dirt bike, on my two-stroke right now, the amount of nature that I am able to see and the places that I can go to, right, I can never do with any other means. I can't do it. I just can't do it. I can't do it in my car. I can't do it in my Jeep. I can't do it on a quad. That dirt bike is like wings of an airplane that allow you to travel to places that you will never be able to see otherwise in that time period, right? So if you can get on that dirt bike for 2, 4, 5 hours, man, you are seeing stuff, no doubt, and experiencing nature that you never would have been able to see or experience before, and then have that sense of broadening perspectives and just looking around and going, wow, man, the world is a beautiful, amazing place, and I'm just a small piece of this, and that's humbling and good for us all.
When I hear you talk about that, what it really says to me is it's almost like so we're talking about being connected to nature and getting outside of ourselves and realizing that there's bigger pieces than me. And riding the dirt bike through that terrain, it's almost like it's supercharging it, because I've had this conversation with people where, technically you could see some of this stuff if you did a hike, but it would take you a week. So on that 4-hour ride that you're talking about on your dirt bike, to hike that legitimately would take you maybe 4 to 7 days, depending. If you did it on a horse, which you could also do, that would take you 2 days. But you did it on your dirt bike in just an afternoon. And so it's almost like supercharging this connection to nature. And obviously, there would be some people who say, well, you're going so fast, you're missing so much. And there's some of that too. But just the amount of vistas and the amount of scenery and terrain that you can cover, I think that maybe has its own kind of quality to it. Would you agree with that, or what are your thoughts on that? Just the fact that you can see so much in a short amount of time, does that play into this a little bit too?
Of course it does, because, and listen, you're talking to a guy that hiked the north rim of the Grand Canyon to the south rim of the Grand Canyon, crossed the Colorado River. It took me 6 days, hiking miles and miles per day. And that is, I mean, talk about soul recharging and beautiful and extravagant and amazing. But if I'm home and I'm working and I'm busy and I have 2 hours and I have 3 hours, man, and I'm up in the Northeast, right, where we go from like city to, rolling hills in, 30 minutes if we need to, I can get away from this grind, this heavy, heavy grind of the Northeast in 40 minutes. And it changes my entire day. I'm going to say it changes my whole week.
Yeah.
So just like you said, it's like a supercharged way of getting that, right? Like if I need to hike the Grand Canyon, I got to take 10 days off of work and I got to fly out there, and that's awesome, right? But dirt bike riding allows us to do it in a more expedited way, right? And we get to these places. And man, let me tell you, from my house, and I'm in northern New Jersey, right? So, and it's a very congested state. And literally I'm 30 minutes outside Manhattan. But man, I take my beta in the trails and I'm out there for an hour, and I pull over some vista at the top of the mountain, and I go, my God, where am I? Is this like West Virginia? I mean, this is gorgeous. So it allows me to do that where I couldn't do that any other way. How else could I possibly do that? The trails that I'm getting to those locations, I couldn't do it on a quad. I couldn't do it with my car, like I said. So that dirt bike in that garage for me is like this, man, it's like this magical machine that can transport me to these places that I couldn't do any other way, basically.
Exactly. And I feel like just from my standpoint, some of the places that you can go on a dirt bike, because of the fact that you only have, two wheels lined up with each other, that allows us to get back into some of these gnarlier, more remote places. And also dirt bikers just kind of have a screw loose sometimes. So sometimes when they've made trails, they go in places that no one else would really go to. And for me, there's a quality, a quality in that part of it itself. We've been in vistas here in the Rocky Mountains in Idaho and Utah, where you get in these really remote places, and it just it almost helps me, because in Utah sometimes we'll be up on a mountaintop and we can see the city. Well, then we'll go to Idaho, and you get on a mountaintop and you see mountain range after mountain range after mountain range and no city, and you realize how isolated you are. And for me, and that would happen in the Grand Canyon too, right? I mean, you'd be down there, you wouldn't see a person for maybe 4 or 5 days. There's something about those types of experiences that help to center me and to recharge me. And we've mentioned that, but it's something so unique to dirt bikes, because it can get you there quickly. It can get you into these areas that you wouldn't see any other way. And that's a beautiful thing.
And you know what else too, Kyle, about it? And we're talking specifically about connecting with nature, right? And that's true nature. Now, listen, I'm an avid skier and a snowboarder. And even if I go out west, I'm going to stand on a line. I'm going to pay for a ticket. I'm going to get on the ski lift that's man-made, that's going to take me up to the top of a hill that's been groomed by a machine, right? So there's still this industrial quality to it, right? Mm-hmm. That brings you back into sort of like, society, I guess, right? Like just the machinery of society. But dirt bikes specifically, think about it. I mean, you're not paying admission. It's not a trail that was made by some corporation. You're getting out there. It's really just reducing everything to its lowest common denominator of nature. You know what I mean? So that to me too is a really important thing. I'm literally going places that no one else is going. No one's like making money off this. This is like, I'm going out there and it's real. This is just real deal. It's just me, that trail that maybe a couple other bikes, maybe a couple of weeks ago made, or maybe I'm making my own trail, right? So it truly brings you to that deep natural connection. And that's the psychological part that makes us feel more in tune with nature, and that makes us feel less, it brings our ego down and changes our perspectives. And to me, that's just priceless.
Yeah, I love that from the mental health standpoint of it. Can we talk about confidence a little bit? I know we talked about that yesterday, and why confidence is important for us neurologically and psychologically, and how the dirt bikes play into that side of it. Can we talk about that?
Yeah, for sure. Now, like, think about confidence, and the way I like to break it down, Kyle, is just let's do it by definition. Like, what is confidence? What does that even mean, right? So, as psychologists and psychiatrists, the way that we describe it is confidence is a belief of how good you can be at something. Now, it's not your actual skill level, right? Isn't that surprising?
Yeah.
Confidence is your belief in yourself of how good you can be. And any time that we do a psychological study on somebody, when people have a perceived sense of improved self-confidence, they're more positive, just positive and optimistic. They're happier, and they have an increase in what we call resilience, which resilience means that you're more apt to try things and fail at them, but eventually more able to get a positive outcome. So that's a definition of confidence. And how dirt biking improves confidence to me, I mean, think about it. We chose, for whatever reason, and listen, you know what they say about psychiatrists, we're all a little nuts, right? we chose a hobby that is incredibly challenging, right? You get on those two wheels, and listen, I don't care how good you are. And I'm not saying that I'm good. I'm novice at best. I've been riding for 3 years. I hit some gnarly stuff out in New Jersey, which, you know, just getting through a ride without breaking something on your bike or hurting yourself, I consider a success, right?
Yes.
So, which is great. But every time I go out, my confidence is tested every single time. And here's the best part. It's not a competition. I'm not entering a race, right? I'm not judged by a time or a lap or to my peers. I'm judged by myself, like what I can accomplish, what I was afraid of, and what I overcame. Because every time I'm out on the trail, there's a bigger log out there that maybe the last time I was afraid to get over, or a bigger, ledge or whatever, or a stream that I was like, you know what, I'm not crossing that, but you do it. And then when you do it, you build that confidence. It's like this personal exercise in overcoming and building confidence. It's just really, really amazing. So dirt bike riding builds confidence without the need for competition, without the need for entering a race. It's personal, and then what happens is, as you gain that confidence, like I said, more positive, generally happier, more resilient, right? More positive outcomes, more likely to try things in the future, right? So no doubt. And I mean, I'm sure you could share some personal stories of how you've built confidence. And I'll tell you what, I'm going to take this a step further. I'm going to take this a step to the videos that I see with your kids and me, myself, teaching my kids how to ride. Talk about teaching someone resilience, falling down and getting up, doing something that's scary and getting over it and overcoming it, right? Dirt bike riding is very unique in that way. And look, all sports do that, right? We all fall down. You get on a snowboard, you fall down 20 times, you get up, you finally get it. But taming a 2-stroke or a 4-stroke dirt bike 30 miles in the middle of the woods and going over things and getting home safely does something, I think, pretty unique.
Yeah, it does. And the thing I loved about hearing you break it down about why that is making me feel more whole as an individual, I think back to when I first started in dirt bikes. I've done a lot of different hobbies in my life, and when I was getting started in dirt bikes, I was still doing long-range shooting, rifle shooting, and a lot of guitar. I see in your Instagram feed here that it looks like you're a guitar player as well. I played a lot of guitar, but I had to play. I wasn't talented enough at guitar that it came easy to me, and so I would have to play guitar, believe it or not, for an hour a day, or I would digress. And I was never really any good, if we're dead honest. But I started riding dirt bikes, and immediately I could see progression. I was only riding once a week or even once every other week, and I was still progressing. And what that did, and I'm just looking back on it after hearing you talk about this, what that did for me is it gave me some additional self-confidence. It gave me some additional self-worth that I hadn't gotten from other activities. And it increased my happiness so much. It was like exponential, because I found this thing that was hard and that I could progress at my own pace. I didn't have to be compared to someone else. It was kind of like a challenge against myself from week to week or from month to month. And then it's happened year after year where I went to one trail, one year, I struggled through it. I come back the next year and it was markedly easier for me. And those are so fulfilling, those moments. And it's that confidence, and it's giving me, it's filling my bucket, and that's what I believe that's what you're talking about, right?
Yeah, look, it's all about looking at what we do in the hobbies that we love, specifically dirt bike riding right now, and drawing out how this is helping us in our daily lives, right? And exactly how you're saying with guitar and all these other things that you're doing on a daily basis and comparing it to guitar. But one thing I just want to add is that, and look, I'm going to just speak for myself on this, but there are times out there on the trail, I am scared. I'm afraid. Like, I am fearful, whether it's a cliff or just something that I'm just afraid, I just don't want to get hurt, or you name it. There's something that frightens me.
Yeah.
Okay. I have to face that fear, and I have to overcome it. And I have to overcome that fear by doing specific things that I've learned in the past. By telling myself, okay, if I handle the clutch this way, if I make sure I've been working on my balance, if I rev it this way, if I work the throttle the way I learned, I'm going to get over this obstacle. I'm going to be safe. And if I brake this way, right? So it's analytical in a way, but you're overcoming a fear by problem solving, right? And what that does is when you get through it, it obviously builds up confidence. But guess what, man? Day to day, I don't care if you have a fear of public speaking. The next time you get up in front of a crowd, if you're working at a company, you're going to take what you learned. And a lot of this is subconsciously. You don't even have to think about it. It's not like, hey, I went dirt bike riding yesterday and overcame my fear, so I'm going to public speak today. It's not like that. It's just this internal subconscious strength that you develop, that you say, I know how to control my fear. I have confidence in myself. I'm going to overcome that obstacle. So that log or that cliff face or that steep downhill or the mud bog that you're afraid to get stuck in, whatever it is, that's a metaphor for so many things in life, man. Wow. And it just carries through, right? So I don't care what your fear is. I think that practicing on your bike, you're growing as a person. You're just growing as a human. And I think that instills so much confidence in us day to day. Even if it's, man, take whatever fear you want, fill in the blank. I guarantee that if you use those problem-solving skills and that self-confidence and belief in yourself, you're going to get through it.
Yeah, I mean, another metaphor that I wrote down yesterday is just, Dom, we don't know what's coming next in our lives. I don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. No one saw COVID-19 coming, or nobody, these different things that happen in our lives. We don't know what's coming next. And that is the same thing that happens when we're out in the middle of nowhere on our dirt bikes, or, things come up on the trail, and you have to have the confidence in yourself to be able to overcome that. And once you've developed this, this practice of seeing a challenge in front of you and pushing through it and figuring out how to get over it, that is building your confidence, and it's building you as a person. And that, I think that's what you're saying, is that kind of infects other areas of your life. Infect is probably not the right word. It's just the one that came up, but it effects or infects the other aspects of your life, and you're able to draw on those life experiences through your hobby that you gain through your hobby to then propel you through some of these really challenging things in our lives, right? Exactly. And again, unique to dirt bike riding. I mean, again, this is not a groomed ski trail. This is not a planned out and mapped motocross track. This is something that you're going to send off on in the woods, and you don't know what's 100 yards ahead around that corner. In most cases, even if you do know that trail, it may have changed. So you have to learn to adapt and roll with it and overcome whatever comes your way. So absolutely, you're right on the money. Yeah. Let's maybe let's talk a little bit about the cognitive psychology part of this, about relying on a machine and problem solving. You touched on it just briefly there when you talked about problem solving. Can we talk about that aspect of why this sport is unique and how that can kind of help you?
Oh yeah, man. Let's think about it. Let's do some comparisons. And again, my disclaimer is I am a sportsman. I love a lot of things, and I'm an avid surfer and skier and snowboarder, like I said. But you know what, Kyle? If I break my surfboard, I'm going to send it to the surfboard shop, and they're going to fix it. If my street bike, starts acting up, it's going to the dealer. If I bust my snowboard, it's going to the dealer, right? I'm going to get a new set of bindings. The thing about dirt bike riding is that it's you and this machine 20, 30, 40, 50 miles in the woods that you really need to know intimately, right? First of all, and you know this as well as I do, and I learned this the hard way, is that, we take these machines through some really, really challenging stuff that things break, right? Like I said, if I make it back from a ride and I don't have to fix something, man, wow, that's like, I either didn't push hard enough or I'm just really lucky. So things break on these machines, and it would be cost prohibitive to send it to the shop every time you broke something. Number one. Number two, you don't want to do that because you need to know your machine. You need to know how it works. And that's mechanical engineering, man. That is an amazing skill to learn and understand. So I wasn't really a handy guy before I got into dirt bike riding. Yeah, I fixed things here and there, and I knew basic mechanics. But over the several years that I've been dirt bike riding, man, I have learned how to fix a two-stroke engine inside and out. I've learned the nuances of a four-stroke engine. I'm doing all my own repairs. So what does that do? I mean, that'll take us back to the whole confidence discussion.
Yeah.
But from a cognitive psychology standpoint, we're learning problem solving. We're learning problem solving. And get this. Cognitive psychology. Let's go to that crazy definition stuff, right?
Yeah.
Cognitive psychology is identifying that there's a problem. Then, once you know there's a problem, defining the problem. Now you have to come up with a strategy to attack that problem. So there's organization. Now you have to get your resources. You have to actually solve the problem, and then you evaluate your results. And I know that's a lot of, psychobabble jargon, but basically, Kyle, what you're doing is taking your brain through these steps of problem solving every time you have to deal with an issue with your bike, right? And you're doing this for lots of reasons. You're doing this because you need your bike to perform well. You're doing this because it's cost prohibitive to send it to the dealer, right, every time you break it. And you're doing it because you need to trust that machine when you're out there, right? So you have this like symbiotic relationship with your machine. So my point is, you're learning an amazing skill. You're learning patience and problem solving, okay? When you do this, again, just like the other things we discussed, this is subconsciously, like I said, we're making it conscious because we're talking about it. We're saying, hey, guys, get this. By doing this, you're going to be better at that.
Yeah.
Most people don't even think that way. But subconsciously, deep down in the recesses of your mind, you probably will apply all of those problem-solving skills to your daily life. Discovering that there's a problem, identifying the issue, defining it in your mind, strategizing and organizing, getting resources, solving the problem, and evaluating the results. Think about how you can apply that to just about any problem in your life. And if you can do that when you come home from a ride and you're like, oh man, my top end is shot, or, I blew this, or my radiator's shot, whatever it is, right? You have to go through those steps, and you're training your brain to think logically that way. And you can apply that to just about anything. You can apply that to relationships. You can apply that to your job. You can apply that to your kids. You can apply that to fixing anything, right? So basically, it's practice. It's practice for your mind to get into that logical problem-solving skill set. Because the truth is, Kyle, you can't wing it, right? Like when you fix your dirt bike, you're not just winging it. You're not just like, well, let me just, put a piece of rubber on this and that'll get you through, maybe like get you home. But you really have to face what's going on and fix it, right? So you're just learning these amazing problem solving skills. And that's cognitive psychology, man. That's making you smarter, and it's making you better to handle so many other things.
And wouldn't that also be kind of tying back to the mindfulness part of it too? Because when you're problem solving, you have to be right there in the moment and be present in order to even start that, right?
Listen, I can attest to this. And I mean, there's probably good and bad to what I'm about to say, but I think we can all say to ourselves that we get pleasure and a sense of comfort and calm when we're working on our bikes, right? So
Yeah.
after a hard day at work, I've been at the hospital all day. Maybe I had an argument with my wife. Maybe the kids are making me nuts. Whatever it may be, when I go into the garage, I get my tools out and I start taking my bike apart. I'm present, just like you said, and I'm focusing on something. So all those other things are kind of, it's making me feel better. It's a little bit of an escape for me. So absolutely that mindfulness part and a little bit of an escape for you, a healthy escape.
Healthy,
right?
Yeah, healthy.
Because you're right. Look, we can talk about so much stuff in psychology. I deal with people that do bad things to cope, right? Like they'll do substances or drugs or drink alcohol or, and those are coping skills too, but they're negative coping skills.
Yes.
If I can get out in the garage and work on my bike for 30 minutes or 45 minutes or an hour, a little bit of quiet time and work on my bike, and that helps me cope with the stresses of my day. And that's, are you kidding me? That's a wonderful, amazing coping skill, right? So yeah, you hit the nail on the head for the mindfulness there, but also the fact that you are problem solving. And then when you finally fix something and you did it and it works, come on, it makes you feel great, right? Like you accomplished something. So again, not just problem solving, but also the pride that you feel when you fix it. And the trust and confidence that you have the next time you're on the trail and something goes wrong with your bike, you're like, okay, no problem. I know what that sound is. I know what that leak is. I know how to fix this. I have the tools for it, right? So again, so you have the confidence, the analytical stuff, the cognitive psych, and a little bit of an escape and a little bit of mindfulness.
Yeah, because what other sports do you have where you are relying on this machine to get you back? And it's a simple machine. Obviously they're getting more complex but if you really break it down, this machine is very simple. There's not a million parts to this thing. The systems are simple, and as we learn that and as we become more intimate with that machine, we develop this cognitive psychology, we develop this confidence that allows us to then take the machine out. I'm much more confident with my machines now than I've ever been because I've got that history behind me and that line upon line of building up my relationship with these bikes and with myself and with my ability to solve problems. And that all ties into this confidence thing and makes me, more. I'll give you an example. Like, I had my kids out 2 days ago. We were out on a ride, and we had a flat. We just installed new tires and new tubes on both of my little son's bikes, and we got a flat on one. And it wasn't a big deal to me. I'm like, look, we're 6-7 miles away from our campsite, but we're going to be fine. I can't fix it right here because I didn't have a way to patch this tube out there in the trail. I have all stuff for my bikes, but I didn't have the stuff to fix his bike. But I just like this. My kids looked at me and they said, "Dad, is this a problem? Are we going to have to leave the bike?" And with the utmost confidence, I'm like, "No, I'll put some air in it and we'll ride it back and we'll get back." And they're like, "Well, won't that ruin something?" And I said, "As long as we're careful, the worst thing that we'll do will definitely ruin the tube, and we could possibly ruin the tire. But if we're careful, we won't ruin the rim." And they're looking at me going, "Dad, how do you know that?" And it's because of all these things that we've been talking about before. It's like, I've been in this situation before. And the sky is not falling. And so I'm not freaking out to them, and I'm not, blaming them. And we're just kind of out there still bonding and having this little, experience and trying to make the best of it. And okay, we'll go back to camp, and then I'll switch over on this other bike. And it helps. Another thing that you talked about before we move off of this problem solving thing that really resonated with me yesterday was, think about this in other aspects of your life, even around the house. So now you've trained your brain to problem solve. Okay, let's say that you have a plumbing issue, like the drain on your kitchen sink stops, draining, or there's a leak, or your water heater has a problem. You've now kind of rewired your brain, and you've developed this confidence in yourself that you can diagnose a problem and fix it. So you may not be a plumber. And even right now in this COVID-19 world that we live in, this is even more important than ever because you probably don't want to call a plumber. Wouldn't it be cool if you had the ability cognitively and the confidence to go fix that drain yourself? And you probably can.
I completely agree. And I want to add to something. You know what my favorite part about your story was, Kyle? was that you experienced that with your kids. And again, don't forget, my other board certification is child psychiatry. So I deal a lot with kids who experience a lot of anxiety and depression as well. And I not that this is to blame for everything, but a lot of kids these days aren't resilient. They're not as resilient. We probably hear that word a lot today from me, but they're not as resilient as they used to be, right? So kids, when they run into issues with their friends or at school or whatever, they just can't bounce back. They don't know how to problem solve, right? Now get this, you're out with your child, your kids, right? They get a flat. I guarantee that they were scared. I guarantee that they had this fear, like, uh-oh, I got a flat. Well, now what, right? So I'm going to tell you something very important about child psychiatry is that children model their parents' behavior. That is a gold standard. That is a gold standard in child psych. So they look to you and they said, all right, what's dad going to do about this? Is he going to freak out? Is he going to throw his wrenches? Is he going to be like, oh, I got to leave the virus? What's dad going to do? Dad's calm. He analyzed the situation. He was confident. He said, there's a way to get through this without breaking anything else. We can get back. There's nothing to be afraid of. We have this. We're confident. And this is how it's going to go down. We don't have the proper, tire patching kit at the moment. But next time, guess what? Maybe we'll bring a kit. But they saw that behavior in you, that problem-solving confidence. And what your children learned is priceless. So they're going to use that. And again, subconsciously, man, in their day-to-day life, problem-solving, they learn something from you. And that, to me, your story with your kids, or when I go out on the trails with my kids, those life lessons, they carry over to them. And to me, what's more important than that, honestly?
Not much.
Yep.
Not much. It's, and I love the transition into thinking about, building our families with this. Even right after that happened, there was another thing, and I just felt really good because I know that these lessons are being had by the kids, and they're taking it to heart because we're riding back. I've got one kid that's going a little slower because I'm telling him in the headset, I'm like, let's just go a little slower. Because the last thing I want to do is damage this rim. So just go a little slower. And then I've got the other son in front, and he's still, everything on his bike is still good. And he goes ripping up this hill and ripping down the other side of it. It was a steep hill, and it was really rocky. And down at the bottom of it, he gets out of control. I can't quite see him because I'm still with my other son back behind just a little bit, but I hear it on the headset. I hear something happens. You know what I mean? And he just eats it hard down at the bottom of this hill. And I get down there, and he's laying on the ground motionless, and he's crying, and I'm trying to turn the volume in my headset down because he's just like filling my helmet now with this, pain. And I look at him, I lay my bike down, I say, hey, buddy, just sit there for a second. I kind of get the bike off of him, and I'm like, just breathe and everything. And he stands up at that point. And 5 years ago or 4 years ago, that would have ended his day. He wasn't really hurt, but mentally he was hurt, right? And he's bumped up on his side. He's a little sore here, and he's crying. And I say, let's get your helmet off. Let's calm down. Let's take a little bit of a break. And we only take like a 3-minute break. By that time, he is ready to go again. He's not even, tears are still coming down his face, and he's pulling his helmet on. And I almost get emotional as I think about this. But this little stud 9-year-old is pulling his helmet on. He's kind of scraped on his side. He took a pretty hard digger, and he's like, okay, I'm ready to go. And I'm sitting there going, a few years ago, it would have taken, I might have had to carry him back on my bike. Mm-hmm. And now he's developed this resilience where he's like, okay, I'm ready to go. He's kickstarting his bike, and he hauled ass after that.
Imagine that.
Imagine
that life lesson.
Yeah, and and I'm like, we couldn't even keep up with him because we've got the flat tire, and he's decided, I'm not going to let this beat me. And we talked about, maybe here's what you did, buddy. Maybe you should have just let it roll a little bit. You got a little squirrely over here. In the next time this happens, just a suggestion I have as your dad is let off the brake. I think what happened is you got a little bit offline, you panicked, you then gave too much brake, and then you washed out your front wheel, and now you're on the dirt, and now we're wiping you off. So I think next time, if that happens, let that sucker go and try to roll through this without being on the brakes, and you might find that you'll make it. And he's looking at me, he's listening, and he takes off. And it was such a proud moment for me because I'm like, this is the resilience. So why is it that kids, because you said something, you said kids today are not as resilient as they used to be. Can you give us any insight into why you think that might be the case?
Yeah, Kyle, there are so many theories about that, and it's hard because we live in a very different culture. Look, I knew when I grew up. Look, I'm in my mid-40s, right? I grew up. I came home from school. I threw my backpack down. I went out into the woods. I built tree forts with my buddies. We had bullies. We got into fights. I got my butt kicked. Things happened, right, as we grew up. But now, the culture of raising children is so different. At least in my area of the United States. Parents are what we call cruise director parents, right? It's like my kids come home and they're like, "What are we doing today, mom and dad?" And then you have an agenda, and the parents are in control of everything, and they don't allow their kids to grow independently, and they unfortunately don't put the children through those self-imposed challenges to overcome and build resilience. So this certainly can be a pretty, controversial topic, but for the most part, I think that's leading to a decreased resilience, decreased self-confidence, which is why kids are so upset, when little things happen, right? Because they don't know how to overcome these things independently on their own. They don't develop that foundation of who they are and what they can accomplish on their own. So, doing things like dirt bike riding being one of them, but there are a lot of things we can do with our kids to teach them those life lessons. But those are some theories as to why things have changed culturally. I think, we're not allowing our kids the freedoms to learn, to fall and get up and dust themselves off and be like, "I got this." We're catching them way too much, right? So we're putting too much padding around our kids. And again, controversial topic, right? I'm a child psychiatrist. I want the best for kids. But I do see that. I think parents need to lay off. I've seen some real crazy stuff, and we can get off on some crazy topics where, your parents, they do their homework for their kids, they register for their college courses for their kids. You have no idea what I see in my private practice. Wow. And I tell parents, I'm like, listen, they need to learn. Kids need to learn. Give them some freedom. Put them through some challenges. Let them cry it out. It's okay to fail. Let your kids fail. Which in essence, of course, we don't want our kids to get hurt, but let them have a little get off on the bike. It's okay, right? Let them take a little tumble, of course, safety, right, first, but dust yourself off, get back up, and keep riding, man. You got this. You get a flat. That's okay. How are we going to fix it? You bust a chain. Okay, no problem. How are we going to fix it, right? So it's all learning, right? And I think the more that we can do with our kids in that respect, the better off they're going to be as adults. Look, I know it's made me a better adult. It's certainly going to make my kids better adults, right?
Yeah. I think about my role as a father, and I'm literally just fumbling my way through this, and my wife is a better parent than I am, but we offer different skills and different things to the kids. But I feel like so much of my goal, I don't feel like, especially with my boys, I have two boys and two girls. The girls are the oldest and the youngest, and then the boys are in the middle. And I don't feel like I'm raising boys. What I feel like I'm doing is grooming men. Mm-hmm. That's how I look at it. And so I'm not, they get a little bit more encouragement and nurturing from their mom. And I'm trying to walk the line of being that nurturing presence, but also be, the one who is reminding them that it's okay to fail, and we're going to do hard things. Because my whole life is just one, if I boil it down, it's one set of do this hard thing and then find another hard thing and do that hard thing. And that's one of the reasons I like dirt bikes, is because it's hard. I do it not because it's easy. I do it because it's hard. And I'm trying to let that kind of distill down into my children. And when I see the progression that we make over the years, and I tell you, and it's a lot of work. Like doing dirt bikes with your kids is a lot of work, because it's hard for us, right? It's hard for us as adults. And then with their little bodies, and they have, the tires are smaller and everything's smaller and things are hard. But these life lessons, I feel like in the end, these are probably going to be the best life lessons that I will pass on to them. And like you said, there's other ways that they could be taught this. They could be taught it maybe through football or maybe through basketball. And we do those things too. Like my kids are in other sports, but there's something unique about the dirt bikes that puts them in situations that are unique. And for me, a blessing, I feel.
I agree. And listen, I want to give you a little bit of kudos, man. Just from what you're telling me, the supportive care, the, being there for your kids, but also teaching them challenging things. That's the recipe. You got it. You're doing a good job.
Well, thank you. We're trying very hard. So we feel, and we're constantly tested every day. With my 14-year-old daughter, my wife and I are looking at each other, and I'm going, "Hey, look, this one's on you. You've been a 14-year-old girl. I haven't. But I'll take some of maybe the lead foot on some of these things with the boys. But man, we're so far out of my area of expertise with my 14-year-old daughter, and it's just getting started now. And I love her to death, and she's amazing. But it's challenging, right, as a parent, and I try to get her into dirt bikes. She does a little bit here and there, but it's a little bit different when you're working with kids. And that's one thing I would say, I guess, that you might be able to riff on for a second, is every kid is a little bit different. One kid you can push really hard and say, go hit that rock, and you can motivate them that way. Another kid, you need to, psychologically, you may need to take a different approach in order to give them the support and the encouragement that they need. I mean, that's a thing, right?
Of course. Every child has a different personality, Kyle. I mean, every child has a different framework of who they are. And a lot of that is potentially genetic, or, this whole nature versus nurture argument, but it's a little bit of both. It's a little bit of genetics. It's a little bit of personality trait. It's a little bit of some of their life experience thus far in the world that lead to these different personalities. And if they're not robots, right? It's not a computer program. Every child's going to be a little different. And you have to sort of roll with it. There's nuance in how you approach each child. And you got to do it in a way, obviously, that's not traumatizing the kid, right? If someone's super afraid of something, you take your time with it, right? And listen, maybe the dirt bike's not right for them. Maybe the basketball court is a better lesson for them. And that's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with that at all, right? But of course, man, everyone has a different personality, and you have to roll with those nuances to help your kids be the best people that they can be. This is my thing with kids, and I tell parents this all the time. We're bumper bowling. What we're doing with our kids is bumper bowling. We're sending them down that lane. We're letting them bounce. We're not letting them get in the gutter, but we're teaching them how to get down that lane, right? And we're just giving little nudges here and there. We're being the best parents we can be, right? But it's each individual is just that. They're individuals, right? So we just got to roll with what the child's personality is like and what their skill set is like. That's all.
Yeah, and the same thing would go with other friends that you have. If you're helping a new friend out in dirt bikes, or a friend who's new to dirt bikes is probably the better way to put it. You're helping them out. You need to take a different approach with each person, and maybe that's a perfect segue into kind of talking about how this sport of dirt biking and our mental health, how that's affected by the groups of people, the relationships that we have with maybe other dirt bike riders. Can we talk about that for a little bit?
Yeah, Kyle, just let's think about this for a second. And again, I mean, I keep saying this because I want to drive this point home. There are a lot of things that are amazing to do with your family and friends. And, like I said, playing around a golf with your buddies is awesome. A pickup game of basketball is awesome. Going for a hike is awesome, right? These are all peer involved activities that are great. They're great for social. They're great for, building a lot of interpersonal connection. But what I've experienced, and I'm sure that, our listeners or your listeners and you can relate to this, there's something a little bit different about hitting the trails with your buddies. And the way that I look at it is this. I mean, the best way I could say it is, look, if, you're out in those trails, man, it's usually pretty dangerous. It's usually pretty precarious. And you're going out with guys that you have to trust, and you have to be there for each other. And that's a whole different ball game than being on a basketball court with somebody or playing around a golf with somebody, right? So, you might have to help out your friend get through some pretty significant, dangerous things, obstacles, or getting hurt, whatever it may be, or breaking your bike. And it goes vice versa, right? Your friend who you choose to go out with might really need to help you out to get you through these pretty scary, dangerous situations. So you're building this, and look, and no disrespect at all to veterans by even saying this, because I've never been in the military and I've never been in a war.
Yeah.
And that's a whole different issue, but I'm saying this just sort of like lightly, that it's almost like you're going into battle with these guys, and you kind of you're experiencing a very significant challenge with the people that you go out with, and you develop this really significant bond. I've had some buddies, Kyle, when I was learning how to ride, and I was getting pretty beat up, and I broke my bike a few times. I blew out radiators, and thankfully I had guys out there with me that, number one, didn't make a fuss about helping me out. It was like this camaraderie that it's like, all right, Dom, look, you blew a radiator, man. Your bike's going to overheat. We got to get you out of the woods. This is what we're going to do. You're going to hike up the trail a little bit. There's a stream. Let's fill your Camelback with water. Bring it on back. I'm going to lift your bike out of this ditch. Maybe we need a tow strap, whatever, right? Just whatever the case is. But they get you through it, and you get home after it all, and you're like, wow. I mean, they really saved me in a way, got me out of something really, really dangerous. And there's this gratitude. There's this incredible gratitude and also selflessness that goes along with dirt bike riding, because this happens a lot when we're out, right? I mean, like I said, a good day means you go out, you don't get hurt, you don't break your bike, no one else breaks their bike. And that's a good day. But listen, man, I don't even know what the stats are, but a lot of the times it doesn't really go that way. Somebody breaks a bike or gets an injury or something happens where you need people that you really can rely on. And from a psychological perspective, in building relationships as humans, as interpersonal interaction and social interaction goes, the two words here from a psychological perspective are gratitude and selflessness. And I see that so much in the dirt bike community. This just sense of selflessness. Like, how many times have we been out and you're out with five guys and somebody, has a get off or their bike, something for whatever reason, their bike is just broke and you're 10 miles away from the trailhead and now we got to do a tow out, and it's no problem. It's okay. It kind of sucks, but it's okay. Let's get you to safety. Let's get your bike fixed. And it's all good. There's just like selflessness about it. You know what I mean? And then there's the gratitude part where you're just so thankful, right? You're just so thankful. And that kind of bonding, to me, and again, I have nothing against golf. I enjoy a round of golf from time to time. But in comparison to other sports, I feel like the bonding, the interpersonal bonding, because it's at that intensity level, is so much more.
Yeah, because you're out there relying on these people. I can think of not countless, but I can think of many, many times when I've been out there at the mercy of the environment and then something goes wrong and now you've got to rely on these other people with you, these brothers with you or sisters if you're doing this, and you're a woman and you've got a women's group or whatever it is, but you're out there and it really matters who you pick to ride with. You've got to trust these people. And obviously you have to start somewhere. If you don't have a group, you've got to start building those relationships. But that's what you're talking about, is building the relationships, fostering those with family, with friends, with other people, and trusting in people. And what you're telling us is that just the trusting people and developing these relationships, that is fostering gratitude and it's fostering selflessness, and that is blessing us with our mental health, right?
Oh my God, it's creating humility. And you want to hear something crazy? I mean, a lot of people don't even believe this, but I've seen PET scans where we look at blood flow in the brain and the usage, or like what parts of our brains are activated with certain emotions. And that old saying, it's better to give than receive, is actually true. And it turns out that when we look at the MRI scans, active MRI scans, they're called PET scans, of people's brain, when they're feeling a sense of giving, the reward system of the brain lights up much more than when you're receiving, right? So when you're out there on the trail and you got to get out your tow rope and you help somebody out and you're giving your time and effort, I mean, that is just a sense of selflessness that makes us feel good. It allows us to feel good. And just look, being a part of that community, there's that give and take, right? So when you're sitting around later and, having dinner or having a beer at the bar or whatever with your buddies, you guys have bonded in a significant way. It's, you've gone through something challenging together and you've been selfless and you have that gratitude. And psychologically, that has some really, really heavy weight. And man, like I said, I mean, I do a lot of sports. I can't think of many sports that you go out for a day and you really have to put a lot of faith, or you might have to really, rise to the occasion to help somebody out significantly just by going out on a day ride, right?
Yeah, I mean, and I love how you brought up the military aspect of this, and again, I'll echo what you said is, we're not comparing this to battle or anything, but if you look at that group as kind of like your test subject, you see these people who've been in the military, who have been in battle together, and these are brothers that, I mean, they're as close to them mentally as they are to anyone else on the entire planet. And it's because they've been through these really harrowing experiences, and they can relate to each other, and they know they look at that guy behind them has their back, and they know that guy would lay down their life for them, and those relationships never go away for their entire lives.
Mm-hmm.
Well, on a lesser sense, because we want to be totally sensitive to that, on a lesser sense, we're tapping into that a little bit by going into some of these environments on our dirt bikes and having some of these adventures. And it could happen too. If you hiked with somebody, from the top to the bottom of the Grand Canyon, you would develop a relationship with that person that would stand the test of time as well. And
Mm-hmm.
that is helping us to give us more happiness, and even serving others. Like you mentioned, if you're helping someone to tow them out, or to help them fix their flat, or they broke a radiator, and you're trying to use JB Weld and bond up the radiator, and then find a ditch somewhere and fill the radiator full of coolant, or use it from your Camelback or whatever it is from your water bladder. Those types of serving, it makes us feel good. I know that here, even just like from a spiritual perspective, I've been taught my whole life, if you're feeling down about yourself, go out, get outside of yourself and serve someone else, and you'll feel better. And what you're saying is that's basically a psychological fact. Is that what I'm hearing from you? Is that if you can get outside of yourself, serve other people, it has almost like a dopamine hit where it makes some of your problems go away and makes you feel better about yourself. Is that what you've noticed with your study?
Yes, and that's exactly right. And we've known this for such a long time. I mean, science is proving it now. Okay, fine. We have numbers and statistics and colorful charts and graphs that show us this stuff. But man, this stuff goes back to the dawn of time, right? Where it feels good to be selfless and give and help others, right? And man, look, I don't care if you're out on the trail and you got somebody that's new, and you're just the guy that's kind of waiting up for them and kind of taking them through the ropes, or you're the guy that's, when you see somebody have a hard get off and you put your bike down and you go run over and you make sure he's okay and you kind of go through a little triage with him. I don't care what level it is, you're helping people, man. And you're developing this really cool relationship, because we've talked about it. Riding dirt bikes can be precarious. It can be scary. It can be dangerous. It's uncharted territory in a lot of situations. It's far from home in a lot of circumstances, and a lot of bad things can happen. So you're developing really, really cool relationships. And part of that is by being selfless, by helping them, right? By being there for them, by being the person that they can trust and rely on. And then that relationship goes back and forth. But look, I mean, we've had this really awesome conversation, right? But I think everything that every heading that we talk about, we can tie into all the other headings we talked about, right? Like, you're out in nature, so you feel that, life is bigger and better than you. So that's kind of selflessness too. We talked about confidence, right? That all ties into helping other people and trusting other people, right? We talked about the cognitive problem solving ability. Well, you kind of need that when you're helping somebody out or someone else is helping you out, right? So all of these things reinforce each other, man. It's so cool to look at it this way, right?
Yeah, no, I love that so much. It is really interesting to me to see how it all ties back together. I just wigged out with my wife, yesterday when we got off the phone, and so she's excited to hear some of this stuff too. So maybe kind of as we wrap up here, let's talk a little bit about the proprioception thing, because this is a concept that I wasn't really aware of. I actually did a little Googling of it yesterday when we were talking about it, and I'm curious to hear how, what your tie-in is to this, and why you think this is important from a mental health perspective, and how dirt bikes help us develop this.
Yeah. So look, physical activity, number one, is incredibly important. Let's just get that out of the way. And I tell my patients this because I've read studies over and over and over again. So let's say somebody's depressed and anxious. I've read studies, Kyle, and I'm a doc. I prescribe medicine, right? I will prescribe you medicine. But physical activity, 30 minutes of cardiovascular activity every day in a lot of cases is just as good as an antidepressant pill in a lot of cases, right? So let's get that out of the way. So the physical stuff we're getting into now, riding your dirt bike, man, kicks your, it's no joke. When you get on some gnarly trails, man, I'm huffing like I just did 50 squats at the gym. I'm I'm usually hurting sometimes. So the physical activity part of it, from that perspective, from the muscular strength, from the cardiovascular activity, is good for us psychologically and physically. They go hand in hand. But you mentioned a word called proprioception. Proprioception is a really interesting phenomenon. Now, from a neurological perspective, what we look at, first of all, proprioception, what is it? Proprioception is your brain's way of understanding where it is in its surrounding space, right? So if you close your eyes and you balance on one leg, your brain is paying attention. Okay, my left foot is raised, I'm balancing, I need to fire this muscle and fire that muscle so I don't fall over. So a lot of neurological adaptation is happening when you're trying to balance, and that's proprioceptive exercise. So we've looked at studies, and this always fascinated me. We've looked at studies at mice, for example, right? And we always kind of do studies on poor mice, right? So you take a mouse and you put them in a space that has a lot of balance beams and challenging obstacles, compared to a mouse that has a very boring cage that's all flat, and you don't really need to do any balance type exercises. Now, when that mouse dies and you take a look at the brain of the mouse that had to do all of the balancing activities was much well formed in a lot of the places that we didn't think it would be more well formed. And that's the frontal lobe of the brain, our problem solving brain, right? So our cognitive brain, the brain that we think with, not so much the physical part of the brain that helps us balance. Of course, that was also better, but the cognitive part of the brain. So let's talk about dirt bike riding. Man, you are on a single track, gnarly trail, and you are standing up on your pegs. Man, I can't think of anything where it teaches you balance and control of your body in space. I mean, you're like a gymnast in some cases, man. I mean, you are balancing. You're going through some crazy stuff. You have to learn how to brake and your body under acceleration and deceleration and just balance in general, right? So what you're doing is something so unique when it comes to balance exercises that it is so good for you cognitively, right? Now get this. When I looked at studies about proprioceptive exercise, it improves cognitive function overall, including improved memory. Imagine that, right? This is stuff you don't really think about. So balance exercises improve cognitive performance in our brain, right? And there are some studies that even show that it may slow down things like dementias and things like that, like Alzheimer's disease and all that, right? There are studies that proprioceptive exercises, balance exercises, help people that are developing dementias, right, to slow it down. So let's just take the average person that works out. Okay, cool. So I'm the average guy, and I go to the gym. I jump on the treadmill for 30 minutes at the gym. I'm running on a treadmill. No big deal. Then I go over and hit the weights. I do some bench press, some pulls, maybe some squats. Cool. Did I really do anything that was challenging my balance? No, I really didn't. So it's very easy to not, even though you're doing physical activity, to not do something that challenges your balance, that challenges your body's ability to constantly pay attention to what's happening in the space around you, right? So dirt bike riding specifically is cardiovascular, it's strength, and it's an enormous amount of proprioceptive exercise, which is that balance training. It's just where you are in space. And God, I mean, you and I could probably think of a million cases where you need some really, really good balance type work to get through some of these trails, right? Yeah. So I think that was a really important thing to touch on as to why dirt bike riding specifically really attacks all of these awesome physical attributes as far as, getting in shape, but also how it applies cognitively and psychologically to us just by doing the actual exercises of riding.
Something that was really interesting there that you mentioned right at the beginning is, as a medical doctor, you're able to prescribe medications to people. But I'm sure as a careful person and an analytical being, how do you decide if you're talking with a client? Where's that line where you say, you know what, I think this person just needs to get some more physical exercise, or this person might actually need some sort of an antidepressant? How do you, I know that doesn't have anything to do with dirt bikes, but it's just curious to me, where is that line? If you look at somebody, you get to know them, you're like, you know what, I think actually what you really need is some of these things we've been talking about. You don't actually have to prescribe a dirt bike to them, but you want to get them out and get them more active and get them, doing some of these things. And it's like this, maybe you needed some exercise. You look at clients, can you identify those people easily, or is it hard? How does that work?
Yeah, it's a really complex sort of algorithm, but let's put it this way. I'm going to say something super basic. There will never, ever be a time, unless someone is totally incapable of it physically, but there will never, ever be a time that I will tell someone that's depressed or anxious or having a mood disorder to not get out and get moving.
Awesome.
Never. I will always, always, always say, what's your activity like? Are you getting out? What kind of exercise do you do? Are you getting some cardiovascular exercise?
So you're going there first. You're going there first before you would ever even consider, like a chemical fix, right?
Always. It's always part of the equation. It's never not a part of the equation. The medications come in secondarily. Now, listen, Kyle, there are times, and being a medical psychiatrist, I deal with some pretty significant stuff. I mean, people that are suicidal, for example, or people that won't even get out of bed or won't even eat or feed themselves because they're so depressed, like really significant stuff. Now, in those cases, it's like, look, we got to get you on a medicine that could probably help you out. But there will never be a time that will not add physical activity to their regimen. And it's a discussion with the patient as well. It's like, someone comes in and says, Doc, look, for the past 6 months, I have just been down in the dumps, and this is, what's going on in my life. We look at three things in psychiatry. We look at biology, psychology, and sociology. So I'm going to look at your biology. What are you doing physically? How's your physical health? How's your sleep? How's your nutrition? How's your diet, right? How's your hydration? That's physical. Then we look at psychology. All right, how are you coping? What are you doing psychologically to cope with your stressors? Are you locking yourself in a room? Are you drinking a bottle of vodka? Are you getting out and doing exercise? What is it that you do to cope and deal? And then we analyze that. And then socially, we look at that third part of the pyramid is socially. What are you doing socially? Are you getting out with friends? Do you have good social support? What's your marriage like? What's your relationship like with your kids, with your friends, whatever? So we take all of those things, I think any good psychiatrist would do that, and kind of look to see where the deficiencies are and just help somebody kind of figure out what the best plan is moving forward. So in some cases, it's all very unique. Everybody's very different. That little triad that I just said to you is going to be different with everybody. But I will always, if possible, recommend some physical activity. Absolutely, undoubtedly. Now, dirt bike riding, I don't know if I'd recommend to a lot of, it's a dangerous sport, man. And as a doc, I could get myself into trouble by saying, hey man, go buy a 300 two-stroke, and hit the trails. I don't know if I can. I'd probably get myself into trouble.
Just send them my way. Just be like, that way you have plausible deniability. Just like send them a YouTube link, and I'll talk to them. So maybe we can partner up that way. Like if you've got some extreme cases where you need some extra help, let me know.
You got it, bud. You got it. And that actually brings up something, and I'll just touch upon it briefly. I did something with post-traumatic stress disorder and surfing, where I taught veterans how to surf and used a lot of what we're talking about today and sort of made the analogies to surfing. And sometimes I do think about putting together like some kind of dirt bike riding clinic for people that are going through some mental tough times, some emotional tough times with depression or post-traumatic stress or veterans, and taking them through like a really basic dirt bike course and taking all of the things we talked about today and sort of like debriefing with it and really talking about how it affects your life in a good way and helping people psychiatrically and psychologically that way. So, that's always something to think about as well, man. That'd be really cool to team up with potentially and do something down the line.
That would be. In fact, I know of a group, I can't think of who they are because I get so many emails coming in, but there is a gentleman that reached out to me just recently where they're doing something like this. He's a vet, and he's like, dirt bikes have really helped me with PTSD, and what I'm finding in my life is, even in my marriage and my relationships, I'm finding like post-traumatic stress disorder is not always, we think of it as just like, oh, this is something that happens if you're in the military. But am I right to say that PTSD can happen in so many other aspects of your life, and now we're starting to like diagnose that more? Is that a thing?
Listen, Kyle, it could be any perceived trauma, and that's subjective. It happens a lot in the military because obviously those guys are exposed to some really traumatic, horrific things in a very short time period while they're deployed or whatever's going on. So we see it a lot in that population. But Kyle, you can have PTSD from a bad car accident. You can have PTSD from a bad injury. You can have PTSD from a bad divorce or a bad relationship or physical or emotional abuse. You can have post-traumatic stress from a lot of things. Basically, post-traumatic stress is your body and mind is being reset. Like you're resetting your thermostat to be a little bit more hypervigilant and aware because your mind and body thinks that the world is a much more dangerous place. So you're on high alert all the time. You feel burnt out, you get depressed, you get super anxious, you're not sleeping because your thermostat is reset. And that's a survival mechanism. It makes sense. You have to pay attention more because you have been put in a position where you were really, really, really scared. But get this, we can talk about dirt bike riding or some other sports that I've used post-traumatic stress treatments for. Post-traumatic stress, treatment is about teaching your body to control what you perceive uncontrollable. Right. And I know that's, again, psychobabble, but the basic point is teaching people to take something that they're afraid of and control it and roll with it and overcome it. And then that reduces some of those symptoms of the post-traumatic stress where you're super, super high. So let's just say, this is a great little discussion. Let's talk about being on the dirt bike, right? When you first get on a dirt bike, man, I know that I would get arm pump in the first 3 minutes because I was holding on to the damn handlebars so tight, right? Until I learned, and my buddies would tell me, and just experience over time, stay loose on the bars, keep control, right? You get your finger on the clutch and finger on the brake, but just nice and loose, nice and easy. Squeeze the bike with your legs, right? Like, don't use so much physical energy. You're not going to control the bike by squeezing the hell out of it, right?
Yeah.
So that's sort of a lesson for like the post-traumatic stress people is, you're going to have to let go a little bit. You're going to have to roll with it a little bit. Yeah. You're going to have to flow with it a little bit. And that's the psychological sort of lessons that you learn when you do things like that and you apply it to post-traumatic stress. So yeah, for sure. It can absolutely be applied.
Yeah. Well, and you'd probably have a harder time with that because I look at these guns that I'm seeing on the internet with your arms and like, of course you're going to get arm pump. You got so much muscle mass up in there. You can't get the blood out of there.
Oh man, that's so funny.
Dudes that are built like you, they have harder problem with our pump. Like little skinny guys like me, we don't have that problem as much.
I don't know, man. I think it was just the lighting in those pictures, man. I'm not
right. All like 200 of these pictures, the lighting was totally off. Yep, you may be onto something. Yeah, no, it has been such a fantastic discussion. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today and with the viewers and with the listeners on my podcast. I've recorded this for uploading to YouTube. I don't get a ton of people watching them on YouTube, but in podcast land, there's thousands of downloads, and it's been an absolute honor, and it's been one of my favorites. And what I really hope is that just people kind of take away the fact that our lives are so connected. Our mental health is connected to our physical health, and our spiritual health it's all connected. We can't really, as guys, and me especially, I like to compartmentalize things. We're good at, I'm sure you know this from your study of the human mind. We men compartmentalize everything. And so at times of my life, I've compartmentalized and said, I'm not going to focus on my mental side of things. I'm not even going to think about that. I'm just going to make sure I'm in physical condition and I'm taking care of my obligations or whatever. But now I'm trying to be more holistic in the fact that, like, look, all of this is connected as a whole. I cannot just put my mental health back in a corner. I've got to face my fears. I've got to face an addiction, or I've got to face this thing, and it's going to help me in all the other aspects of my life. And I think that probably is so much of what you're doing with psychology is helping people to understand these things. And just the fact that we were able to tie it into dirt bikes, I never would have believed that we could have done that. And yet we have in such a powerful way. I just thank you for helping us do that.
Hey man, Kyle, it's been my pleasure 1000%. You know, I love your videos. You've changed my life for the positive in so many ways, and I'm sure you're doing it for your viewers as well. So I'm incredibly happy to contribute. I'm glad we became friends. And, you know, and moving forward, man, just, you know, just keep doing what you're doing. You're doing an awesome job. And thank you so much for having me.
Okay. Thank you so much. We'll be in touch. I'll cut you loose, and we'll catch up real soon. Hopefully we can get out and do a ride. I wish we didn't live 3,000 miles apart, but we'll figure it out sometime.
Man. The world is a small place. We'll get together at some point.
Thank you so much,
Thanks,
Dr.
bud.
Dom. Appreciate it.
Bye.
Wow. Literally, wow is all I have to say. That to me is so mind-boggling and so enlightening, and it's just, I hope you guys enjoyed that as much as I did. Maybe I'm just geeking out on it, but I think there's so many valuable nuggets in there that we can take away. This sport that we love, sport of dirt bikes, it is doing more for us than we probably ever even considered. And going through the different topics with Dr. Dom, what a cool guy. Another thing, too, is just I love hearing from you guys. Reach out to me, Kyle@dirtbikechannel.com. The way that Dr. Dom and I got to know each other here just a little bit is by him just reaching out and saying, hey, here's what's going on in my life, and have you thought about the way that dirt bikes are helping people? I'm a board-certified psychologist, double board-certified psychologist, and I'm seeing this, and this is what I'm noticing in my practice, and this is what I'm noticing especially in the times that we live in, and we have this hobby that has some really valuable things that it's doing for us from a mental health perspective. So my message to you guys is digest that, but also if you have ideas for additional podcasts, for interviews that I could do that would benefit the group, let me know. Kyle@dirtbikechannel.com. Also, please rate and review. And man, if you've stayed around this long, I might as well just shamelessly plug. If you want to support Dirt Bike Channel, you can use my links for Rocky Mountain ATV down in the description of this podcast or the description of any of my YouTube videos. You'll find my links to Rocky Mountain ATV/MC, where you use those links and I get a referral bonus for sending you there. Also, in just a few days, it's April 10th when I'm recording this. In just a few days, we've got the Dirt Bike Channel sweepstakes coming up where I'm giving away 3 dirt bikes. Count them, 3 dirt bikes. There's a Beta 300, there's a Yamaha YZ250 FX, and there's also a KTM 300 that I'm giving away. All the details will be on my website as of April 15th. The sweepstakes goes from April 15th until June 15th, so you got a 60-day window, and then we're going to be giving those bikes away. Everybody stay safe. Also, just know that, look, you might want to just tone it down just a little bit here during these COVID times. You don't want to go to the emergency room, so maybe just tone it down a notch so you don't end up in the hospital. And that would probably be a good thing. We didn't talk about that. We talked about it yesterday, but we forgot to talk about it now. So just, use wisdom, use some good judgment, and man, leave a single track. Thanks, guys.